I bet there's stolen stuff in there. There always is. I'm searching it. Full search. They hide things everywhere.
Mark Reynolds pointed at the carry-on suitcase Camilla Johnson was holding. The two stepped forward, blocking her path to the boarding gate, while other first-class passengers walked through without interruption. Camilla had seen this before, many times, but this time, something would be different. Very different. John F. Kennedy International Airport buzzed with the typical Monday morning rush at 7 a.m., Terminal 8. Gate 24. Flight AA8347 to Miami, scheduled for 8:15. The first-class boarding line had only 8 passengers. All white, all waved through without issue. Until Camilla arrived. She was 34, her dark skin glowing under the fluorescent lights, natural curls pulled into a flawless low bun. She wore tailored black slacks and a perfectly cut navy blazer. In her right hand, a standard black carry-on. In her left, a genuine leather executive folder. She had woken up at 4:30 that morning, as she always did on flight days. The ritual never changed. Quick shower, black coffee without sugar, weather check, mental review of procedures. Even when she wasn't in uniform, even when she was traveling as a passenger, the routine remained. It was part of who she was. On the drive to the airport, she had listened to the morning news, stories about police violence, debates over affirmative action, the same conversations repeating for years while the numbers barely moved. Less than 3% of commercial pilots in the U.S. were black. Less than 0.5% were black women. 20. She was one of 20 in the entire country. And every time she walked into an airport, she knew she would have to prove something. A badge wasn't enough. A license wasn't enough. 6,500 flight hours weren't enough. Someone always looked at her and saw her skin before they saw her competence. She handed her boarding pass to Mark. "Good morning." Mark took it and examined it with exaggerated scrutiny. He looked at the photo, looked at Camilla, back to the photo, flipped the card over as if searching for forgery. "First class?" "Yes." "You bought this ticket?" The question was so absurd she had to take a breath before answering. Of course she bought it, like everyone else in that line. But she knew what he really meant. "How do you afford first class?" "Yes." "With your own money?" "With my salary." "Yes." Jason stepped closer, positioning himself on her other side. A rehearsed move. Surround the target. Intimidation by proximity. Camilla recognized it immediately. She had seen it before, directed at other black passengers, Latino travelers, Arab businessmen, anyone who didn't match the mental image of a first-class traveler. "Open the bag." "It just went through X-ray 5 minutes ago." "We're doing a manual inspection. Standard procedure." "Standard procedure is searching passengers without cause?" "We have cause," Mark said, smiling without warmth. "Suspicious behavior." "What behavior?" "Nervousness, avoiding eye contact." "I'm looking directly at you and I'm not nervous." "See? Defensive, even more suspicious." The logic was circular by design. Nervous, suspicious, calm, suspicious, cooperative, hiding something. Defensive, confirming guilt. An elderly couple adjusted their path to. An elderly couple adjusted their path to avoid walking too close, as if whatever Camilla carried might be contagious. That familiar sensation settled over her. Exposure, everyone watching, everyone judging, everyone assuming, based solely on her skin. She placed the suitcase on the ground and opened it. Inside, a work laptop, a transparent folder of documents, a toiletry pouch, a paperback novel, a phone charger, headphones. Nothing unusual, nothing different from any other passenger's luggage. keys. Looked beneath the keyboard as if keys. Looked beneath the keyboard as if contraband might be hidden there. Opened the toiletry bag and scattered its contents carelessly across the counter. A lipstick rolled off and hit the floor. He didn't pick it up. Where do you work? In aviation. Doing what? Cleaning? Jason laughed loudly, deliberately loud, so others could hear. Camilla clenched her jaw and counted to 5 before responding. No, I don't do cleaning. So what? Flight attendant? I work in aviation. Being evasive, another sign? She could have ended it right there. I'm an airline captain. 3 words. But she didn't say them. Years of navigating institutional and casual racism had taught her something important. Let them reveal themselves fully. Let them commit. Let witnesses record it. Evidence mattered more than pride. Mark grabbed the leather folder. And this? Yours too? The implication was clear. How do you own something like this? It is. Bet you took it from someone. He opened it without permission. Inside were documents, a tablet, a metal pen engraved with her name, and a small leather zip case. What's this? Work documents. He unzipped it. A gold badge gleamed under the fluorescent lights. 4 raised horizontal stripes, stylized wings above. Below, engraved clearly, Captain Camilla Johnson. He stared at it for 3 seconds. Either he didn't recognize it, or he recognized it and refused to process what it meant. He closed the case and tossed it back into the folder carelessly. Whatever you do, it doesn't justify first class. The badge represented 8 years of command, 6,500 flight hours, and hundreds of lives protected during emergencies passengers never even knew happened. It was literal evidence. And he looked, and he didn't see because he didn't want to. Arms up. For what? Body search. I passed the metal detector. Manual inspection. Procedure. No other passenger was manually searched. They weren't suspicious. More phones were recording now. Good. She needed documentation. She raised her arms slowly, maintaining dignity inside humiliation. Mark ran his hands along her sides, shoulders, waist, down her ribs. Too slow, too close. Fingers pressing harder than necessary, deliberately invasive. Turn around. She turned. His hands moved down her back to her waist and paused at her hips for several seconds, long enough not to be accidental, long enough to be harassment. She closed her eyes and breathed through the fury. Her fists tightened so hard her nails cut into her palms. Then something fell from the open folder onto the marble floor. The sound of glass shattering. Jason picked it up before she could react. A small silver frame. Inside, a faded photograph. 19-year-old Camilla with her parents in front of a white and blue Cessna 152. The day of her first solo flight. The day her father cried and said, "My daughter is going to fly higher than all of us." 3 years later, he died of a sudden heart attack. He never saw her become captain. Cute, Jason said, turning the frame in his hands. Whole family together. Mark glanced at it and smirked. Nice. Jason looked directly into Camilla's eyes and opened his fingers. The frame dropped. The glass exploded across the marble. Oops, clumsy. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. Cruel. Camilla looked at the shattered frame, the image of her father dusted with broken glass, and something shifted inside her. Not rage, something colder, calculated, implacable. They didn't know it yet, but they had just signed their own professional death sentence. She bent down and picked up the broken frame. A shard sliced her index finger. A thin line of blood formed. She wiped it on her slacks and placed the frame back into her folder without saying a word. Anything she said would be twisted. Any reaction labeled aggressive. So she swallowed the grief, swallowed the anger, swallowed the urge to scream, and remained impeccably polite, as she always had to be. "Lower your arms." She did. "Satisfied?" "Not yet." "Take off the blazer." "I'm not removing it." "Then you're not boarding." "This is harassment." "It's procedure. Take it off or stay." She removed the blazer slowly. Underneath was a short-sleeved white blouse. Mark's eyes traveled over her in a way that had nothing to do with security. "Put it back on." She did, each motion deliberate, controlled. "You can board now," Mark said, handing back the pass. "But I'll notify the flight crew. Tell them to keep an eye on you." "Keep an eye on me for what?" "You know, people like you sometimes cause problems." "People like me?" Jason answered flatly. "First-class passengers who don't belong there." The words hung in the air. Raw, unmasked, racism without disguise. Camilla picked up her suitcase and her folder with the broken frame inside and walked toward the restroom area. She needed a moment. She needed to breathe. She needed to regain control before boarding. She entered the women's restroom, passed 2 women washing their hands, and went straight to the last stall. She locked the door, leaned against it, and for the first time in 20 minutes allowed her body to relax. Her hands were visibly shaking now. Not from fear, from contained rage, from accumulated humiliation, from a bone-deep exhaustion that came from having to prove every single day that she deserved to exist in any space she entered. She looked at her reflection in the small mirror on the stall door. Blazer wrinkled from the search. Hair slightly undone from when Mark's hands had brushed too close to her neck. Eyes tired, of a woman who had woken up at 4:30 a.m. and had already lived through a full day of humiliation before 7:30. For a moment she considered quitting. It would be so easy. Call operations. Say, "I can't do this. Send someone else. Anyone else who doesn't have to go through this." It would be easier, less painful. It would be surrender. But then she remembered. She remembered the first time she stepped into the cockpit of a commercial aircraft 15 years ago as a trainee, and the captain had looked at her and said, "You're flying?" As if it were physically impossible. She remembered the jokes about affirmative action hires, the insinuations about sleeping with instructors to pass, the hundreds of microaggressions that stopped being micro once they piled high enough to become a mountain. She remembered the messages from young black girls. "I saw you on the news. Now I want to be a pilot too." Representation wasn't a buzzword. It was tangible hope. And she remembered the statistics. Less than 3%, less than 0.5%. 20 black female commercial pilots in a country of over 300 million people. If she quit, Mark and Jason would win. Not just today, but always. Because they would keep doing this to the next black traveler. And the next, and the next, and one by one, those women would give up until there was no one left. Camilla turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on her face. The shock helped clear her head. She took 3 deep breaths, the grounding technique her therapist had taught her, counted to 10, redid her bun with precise, practiced motions, straightened her blazer, smoothed the fabric. She looked at herself again. This time she saw a commander. not a victim. "You can handle this," she whispered to her reflection. "One more day, one more test, one more battle, and after this, never again, because you're going to make sure of it." She checked her folder. The small voice recorder inside was still running. A green light blinked discreetly. Good. She unlocked the stall and stepped out. Two women stood at the sink. One, a black woman in her 50s, gave her a subtle nod. Silent solidarity. She had seen. She understood. Camilla nodded back and walked out. Because this wasn't just about boarding a plane anymore. It was about documenting a pattern of institutional racism, creating evidence that couldn't be dismissed or minimized, ensuring that Mark Reynolds and Jason Miller and others like them faced real consequences, not for revenge, for justice, and for everyone who would come after her. She walked back toward the gate. Mark and Jason were still there, laughing with another security officer. When they saw her, their smiles widened. She passed without looking at them and handed her boarding pass to the gate agent. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Johnson," the agent said professionally. "First class, seat 2A, have a great flight." Camilla nodded in thanks and stepped onto the jet bridge. Behind her, she heard Mark say loudly, "There's always one who insists, but we know. We always know." Jason laughed. She kept walking. Didn't turn, didn't react, just stored it. Because every word was being recorded. And when the time was right, those words would come back to haunt them. The Boeing 7879 Dreamliner was an aircraft Camilla knew intimately. She had flown this model 847 times. She knew every sound, every vibration, every nuance. It felt like an extension of her own body. When she was flying, she didn't consciously think about the controls. She felt them. The aircraft responded before thought became action. But today she wasn't in uniform. Today she was seated in 2A, playing the role of passenger she never fully stopped being a pilot inside. Because pilots never stop being pilots, even off duty. They always listen to engine pitch changes, feel turbulence quality, assess crew coordination. She walked down the first-class aisle. 12 seats arranged in a 1-2-1 configuration for privacy. Cream leather, oak trim, adjustable LED lighting, 15-inch screens, fully reclining seats. Each first-class seat cost the airline roughly $100,000 to install. The passengers paid $5,000 to $6,000 for the ticket. And Mark had asked if she bought it with her own money. She found seat 2A by the window, lifted her bag into the overhead compartment with practiced efficiency, checking the latch automatically. Sat down. The seatbelt clicked with satisfying finality. Outside the window, she watched ground operations, baggage loaders, fuel truck attached, mechanics conducting external checks, every movement choreographed, every role defined. Commercial aviation was a miracle of coordination. Dozens of professionals ensuring 300 tons of metal and fuel defied gravity safely. And in a few hours, she would be commanding something similar. But for now, she was just another passenger. "Champagne?" a flight attendant offered, with a professional smile. "No, thank you. Water, please." "Sparkling or still?" "Still. And if you made it this far in the video, comment pilot so I can leave you a lovely heart." Camilla opened her tablet and began drafting a preliminary report. Precise timestamps, direct quotes, sequence of events, list of witnesses. The documentation had to be flawless. The man seated beside her in 2B glanced at her. Mid-40s. White, expensive watch, corporate suit. He gave her that quick, unconscious evaluation people give. "First time in first class?" he asked, tone coated in condescension. She paused, typing, and looked at him. No. Ah, miles upgrade? There it was. The assumption. You didn't pay for this. I bought it. Wow, he said, genuine surprise. Lucky. Not good for you. Not congratulations. Lucky. As if a black woman's presence in first class could only be explained by chance, not salary. She returned to her tablet. He tried again. Traveling for work? Yes. What field? Aviation? Oh, flight attendant? There it was again. Automatic assumption. She looked at him briefly. No. Then what? She considered telling him. She decided not to. I work in aviation. That's enough. She closed the tablet. Conversation over. He picked up a magazine. Camilla closed her eyes, trying to relax the tension that had been building since 6 that morning. But she couldn't, because she knew this day wasn't finished with her yet. Economy class continued boarding. 280 passengers in total. Families going to Disney. Executives headed to meetings. Elderly couples visiting grandchildren. Students starting exchange programs. Each one with a story. Each one trusting that the aircraft would carry them safely over 9 hours of ocean. Few of them ever thought about what could go wrong. About the decisions made in split seconds. About the training required to make it all look easy. Maybe if they knew, they'd fly less. Or maybe they'd appreciate more. The flight attendant returned with her water. Crystal glass, lemon slice floating. Camilla checked the time. 8:10 a.m. departure scheduled for 8:15. The cockpit door was open. She saw the first officer, Rodrigo Alves, running through checklists. Competent. Around 1,200 hours. Still junior. Needed 4,000 more before qualifying for captain. She remembered that stage. Hungry to learn. Watching captains carefully, not just procedures, but philosophy. It had taken her 10 years to earn her 4 stripes. 10 years of brutal schedules, 16-hour duty days, studying 1,000-page manuals, training emergency scenarios until they were reflex. And still, someone assumed she was there because of a quota. She closed her eyes again. Then she heard voices. Tense voices. Flight attendants speaking quickly near the cockpit. Something was wrong. Patricia, the lead flight attendant, was on the interphone. She hung up and spoke urgently to the first officer. Body language told the story. Problem. A moment later, Patricia approached. Ms. Johnson? Yes? Could you come with me, please? There was urgency under the professionalism. Camilla stood, picked up her folder, and followed her into the galley area out of passengers' view. Is there a problem? She asked, already knowing the answer. Captain Mendes didn't show up, Patricia said, voice tight. We've tried calling, straight to voicemail. No one knows where he is. And the first officer? Rodrigo is in the cockpit, but he only has 1,200 hours. He can't assume command alone. Camilla nodded. The regulation was clear. A first officer with fewer than 1,500 hours could not operate without a qualified captain. Patricia lowered her voice. There's more. 2 security officers at the gate want to speak with you. They say a suspicious passenger boarded. Camilla didn't even blink. Of course, Mark Reynolds and Jason Miller weren't done. Did they describe this passenger? Black woman. First class, evasive behavior. Patricia looked genuinely uncomfortable. The description was specific. Clothing. Seat number. And you think it's me? Ms. Johnson, My name is Captain Johnson, Camilla corrected calmly, steel underneath the composure. "And I'm going to handle this now. Where's Robert?" "Robert? The operations supervisor? Yes, get him, now." While Patricia made the call, Camilla walked toward the aircraft door. Mark and Jason were on the jet bridge, laughing with another security officer. When they saw her, their smiles widened. Predators who believed they had cornered prey. "There she is," Mark said loudly. "Told you something was off about her." "What's the issue?" Camilla asked, standing in the doorway. "You need to deplane. We're searching the cargo hold." "Based on what?" "Reasonable suspicion." "Of what?" "We can't disclose that. Security matter." Camilla crossed her arms. Her posture shifted. She was no longer a cornered passenger. She was a professional evaluating amateurs. "So you're proposing to delay an international flight, deplane 280 passengers, and search the entire cargo hold, based on suspicion you can't articulate?" "If necessary." "And that necessity is based on what? The color of my skin?" "Behavior," Jason said quickly. "Suspicious behavior." "Specify it." "Nervousness, evasion, defensiveness." I was calm. I answered every question. The only defensiveness came after an invasive search without cause. Robert arrived at the jet bridge with the expression of a man who had just inherited a disaster. "What the hell is going on here?" "Suspicious passenger," Mark said. "Indicators of possible contraband." "Possible?" Robert stopped, hands on hips. "You want to stop an international departure over possible?" "Security procedure." "Show me the protocol. Who authorized a cargo hold inspection?" "We have authority to search, yes. To block departure without documented cause?" "No." Robert turned to Camilla. "Captain, my apologies. Please return to your seat." "Wait!" Mark protested. "She can't." "She can and she will. Valid boarding pass. Cleared security. No outstanding alerts. You two return to your posts, now." "But now!" They stepped back, muttering. But the look in their eyes said clearly, "This isn't over." Camilla returned to her seat. She knew exactly what was happening. The more they escalated, the more evidence she accumulated. And when the time came, that evidence would bury them. Moments later, the announcement came over the PA system. "Ladies and gentlemen, we regret to inform you that Flight AA8347 to Miami is delayed due to an operational issue. We appreciate your patience." Murmurs rippled through the cabin. The man beside her sighed dramatically. Always something, always delays. A businessman 2 rows back complained loudly into his phone. A young mother tried to soothe a crying baby. Camilla looked toward the cockpit. Rodrigo was on the radio, tense. She knew exactly what was happening. Without a qualified captain, the flight could not depart. And with Captain Mendez hospitalized, a replacement would take hours to arrive. Unless Patricia appeared again. "Captain Johnson, may I speak with you?" Some passengers nearby looked up. "Captain?" "Of course." They stepped into the galley. Rodrigo and Robert were waiting. Robert didn't waste time. "Captain Mendez is in surgery. Acute appendicitis. He's stable, but he cannot fly. We have no available captain within immediate range. The nearest is 4 hours away." Rodrigo looked at her with quiet hope. Robert finished. "We need you to take command." Silence. "My uniform is in my overhead bag," Camilla said calmly. "Can you change here?" "I can, but I prefer to do it in front of everyone." "Why?" "Because I want them to see, especially the 2 security officers who tried to block me." Robert understood immediately. "Do it. Call them back to the aircraft." "For what?" "They'll understand." Camilla retrieved her bag. Passengers were watching now, curious about the delay. She opened it right there in the aisle. Inside was a full captain's uniform, navy blazer with embroidered gold insignia, 4 gold stripes on the shoulders, white pressed shirt, black silk tie, crisp slacks, polished leather shoes. She dressed methodically. Shirt first, each button precise, tie knot flawless, blazer on, then the insignia. 4 gold stripes caught the cabin light. Total silence in first class. The man in seat 2B stared at her, mouth open. You're a pilot? Captain, she corrected. Captain Camilla Johnson, 6,500 flight hours, 8 years commanding aircraft like this one. She pinned her official wings to the blazer, the same badge Mark had seen and dismissed. Murmurs spread through the cabin. She's the captain? Seriously? The executive who had complained earlier fell completely silent. Camilla walked toward the cockpit. Every step deliberate. Authority had shifted. Patricia announced formally, "Captain on deck." Camilla entered the cockpit. Through the cockpit window, she saw Mark and Jason returning to the jet bridge. "Let them in," she said calmly. "You're sure?" Rodrigo asked. "Completely, and record everything." Rodrigo discreetly activated his phone camera. Moments later, Mark and Jason entered the cabin and stopped. They saw her. The uniform, the 4 stripes, confusion, then shock. "You?" Mark said. "What are you doing here?" "Working, as I always do." "Working? You're a flight attendant?" "No." "Then what?" He looked again at the stripes, processing slowly. "That's not... You can't... I am Captain Camilla Johnson," she said clearly, "commanding officer of this Boeing 7879 Dreamliner, and you are currently standing in my cockpit without authorization." Jason laughed nervously. "This has to be a joke. You? Captain? It's not a joke. It's reality. And you just spent the last hour attempting to prevent the commanding officer of this flight from boarding. But you weren't in uniform." "My uniform was in the bag you searched, along with my credentials. You saw them. You chose not to process them." Mark found his voice again. "You lied. You didn't tell us you were a pilot." "I did not lie. I answered every question truthfully. I said I work in aviation. You assumed the rest." "You tricked us." "I documented you," she interrupted calmly. "There's a difference." Robert stepped forward. "What is happening?" "She's pretending to be the pilot," Mark snapped. "She is not pretending," Robert said sharply. "Captain Johnson is one of our most experienced commanders. But she's..." He stopped himself. "Black?" Camilla finished for him. "You can say the word." Silence. Passengers were standing now, phones raised. "This doesn't make sense," Jason muttered. "Black women don't just become airline captains like that." "Why not?" Camilla stepped forward. "Why can't a black woman command a commercial aircraft?" "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant. You saw my skin and decided I didn't belong. You searched me without cause. You destroyed personal property. You delayed a flight, based solely on prejudice." "We were doing our job." "Your job is to protect passengers based on evidence. You had none, only bias." Camilla held up the small voice recorder. "And I have proof." She lifted it high enough for everyone to see. 27 minutes of audio, every word, every comment, every action. "You can't record without consent," Mark protested. "Yes, I can," Camilla said. "Public airport area. No reasonable expectation of privacy. Security screenings are routinely recorded by the airport and the airline. I simply did the same." She pressed play. Loud volume. Mark Reynolds' voice came through the small speakers. Clear, undeniable. I bet there's stolen stuff in there. There always is. First-class passengers had moved closer now, a tightening circle of witnesses. Several phones were raised, recording. Jason Miller's voice followed. They hide it everywhere. Mark went pale, blood draining from his face. Camilla let the audio continue. Suspicious behavior. People like you sometimes cause problems. First-class passengers who don't belong there. That last line echoed in the silent cabin. Camilla stopped the recording and waited, letting the weight of their own words fill the space. This is racism, she said finally, voice controlled but fueled by decades of living it. Explicit, documented, recorded, criminal. It was a misunderstanding. Mark tried, voice failing. Camilla stepped closer. A misunderstanding? You searched me. You touched my body without cause. You deliberately dropped and shattered a family photo. You made comments about my appearance, my work, my life. You treated me like a criminal. And why? She looked around to make sure everyone was listening. Because I'm black. The word landed like a bomb in absolute silence. Robert stepped forward and grabbed the radio clipped to his belt. Security, I need an escort immediately to flight AA8347 at gate E17. 2 personnel are being removed for cause. No, Jason shouted. You can't do that. We didn't do anything wrong. Robert's voice rose for the first time. Didn't do anything wrong? You humiliated a passenger, conducted a search without cause, destroyed personal property, made racist statements that are recorded. And worst of all, you tried to prevent the captain from boarding the flight she was about to command. He turned to Camilla. Captain Johnson, I offer a formal apology. On behalf of the company. This should never have happened. No, it shouldn't, Camilla said. But it did, and there have to be consequences. There will be. Mark Reynolds and Jason Miller, you are terminated for cause, effective immediately. You will be escorted off. HR will contact you regarding disciplinary action and criminal referrals. Criminal? Mark's face drained even further. For what? Camilla answered, each word heavy. Civil rights violations and assault under color of authority and harassment. And because this happened in a federally regulated transportation environment, it will be handled at the federal level. Jason began trembling. Wait. We didn't know. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Camilla said. It was a choice. You saw me. You made assumptions based on skin, and you acted with cruelty. That wasn't accidental. It was deliberate racism. She lifted the recorder again. And I have 27 minutes proving it. 2 different security officers appeared. Different uniforms, different badges. Men Camilla didn't recognize. These 2? One asked. Yes, Robert confirmed. Remove them immediately. No access to secure areas. Deliver directly to HR. The officers stepped closer. Gentlemen, no resistance. Wait, Mark pleaded, turning to Camilla. Please, I've been here 12 years. I have a family, kids. I need this job. Camilla looked at him without blinking. You should have thought about that before humiliating an innocent person, before breaking personal property, before acting out of hatred. It was just work. I didn't... No, Camilla cut in. It wasn't work. It was racism. And now you'll pay the price. The officers took Mark and Jason by the arms. Let's go, now! This isn't over, Jason shouted as he was pulled away. We'll sue! We have rights! Camilla's voice carried across the aircraft. Sue if you want. You'll lose. I have audio. I have witnesses. I have facts. And I have competence. something you clearly don't recognize when it comes in black skin. They were escorted down the aisle, all 280 passengers watching. Even economy had people standing, phones up. Some booed, others applauded. Screens captured everything. At the door, Mark turned back one last time, desperate. "You set us up! You tricked us!" Camilla stood at the cockpit entrance, uniform immaculate, wings gleaming, posture unwavering. "No, I documented. You chose to dig your own grave. I just handed you the shovel." She looked at everyone watching. "Let it be clear. What you're facing isn't revenge. It's justice. Racism isn't an opinion. It's a crime. And crimes have consequences." They were pushed out. The aircraft door shut behind them. Silence for 2 or 3 seconds. Then applause exploded. It began in first class, spread to business, and swept through economy like a wave. 280 passengers on their feet, clapping, shouting, whistling. "That's right. Justice. You're incredible, Captain." The man in seat 2B was crying openly now, hands shaking. "Captain Johnson," he said when the noise dipped slightly. "I saw everything at the gate. I saw how they treated you." And I stayed silent. I didn't say anything because I assumed maybe they had a reason. I was wrong. Completely wrong. I want to testify. Officially. Whatever you need. "Thank you," Camilla said. "Your testimony will matter." Patricia appeared, tears running through her makeup. "Captain, I recorded everything. The entire confrontation. Saved in 3 separate places." "Perfect." Robert leaned against the wall, hand over his face, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. "Captain, I don't have words. I don't even know how to describe it." "Necessary," Camilla said simply. "Because if I didn't, they'd do it to the next black person tomorrow, and the next, and the next. Someone had to stop it. Today it was me." "But doing it in front of everyone, documenting everything, the courage." Camilla shook her head. "It wasn't courage. It was calculation. Racism thrives in silence. So I brought light. More witnesses means less denial." Robert nodded slowly. "The company will back you, completely. And I will personally ensure a full protocol review, mandatory training, real zero tolerance, not just on paper." "Good. And now, if you'll excuse me," Camilla glanced at the clock. "I have a flight to command. We're already late." She turned and entered the cockpit. Rodrigo stared at her like she was a superhero. "Captain, I don't have the right words. It had to be done. But the way you did it, strategic, calculated. I learned something over the years, Rodrigo. Rage alone changes nothing. But documented rage, used strategically at the right moment, that changes everything." She sat in the left seat, put on her headset, adjusted her position. "Back to work. Departure checklist?" "Yes, Captain." They ran the sequence, professional, focused, as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. Because for Camilla, flying wasn't drama. It was competence. And she was about to prove it. She keyed the microphone for the passenger announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Johnson. I apologize for the delay. The situation has been resolved, and we are ready for departure. Estimated flight time to Miami is 9 hours and 40 minutes. Weather indicates potential turbulence over the Atlantic, so please keep your seatbelt fastened whenever you are seated. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for your support. It means more than you can imagine." Her voice was steady, professional, with no trace of the storm she had just walked through. She switched back to the checklist. Hydraulics? Normal. Pressure in all systems. Electrical? Main generators online, batteries charged. Fuel? 92 tons, sufficient for Miami plus reserves. Pressurization? Tested, ready, every item verified, every system confirmed. There was no room for error, not when 280 lives depended on doing everything right. A TC called. AA8347, ready for pushback? Camilla transmitted. Tower, AA8347, affirmative, ready for pushback. AA8347, cleared for pushback, runway 04L, wind 040 at 12 knots, altimeter 30.12. Cleared for pushback, runway 04L, AA8347. The tug began pushing the aircraft back from the gate, 220 tons moving smoothly over the pavement. Camilla monitored via external cameras. Once aligned, she started the engines. Right engine first. Turbine spun up gradually to idle. A deep, steady sound. Powerful, reassuring. Then left engine. Same sequence, same precision. Engine stable, Rodrigo confirmed. Request taxi. Tower, AA8347, engine started, requesting taxi. AA8347, taxi via Alpha 3, hold short of 04L. Taxi Alpha 3, hold short 04L, AA8347. Camilla released the parking brake. The aircraft began rolling, responding to subtle steering input. They passed the terminal where, an hour earlier, she had been humiliated. Now she was commanding $120 million in aircraft technology and responsible for 280 lives. A complete inversion. They reached the runway hold, short line. 3 aircraft ahead. Camilla waited patiently, using the time to mentally review emergency procedures. Engine failure on takeoff, reject before V1, continue after. Fire in flight, secure the engine, discharge extinguisher, prepare diversion, rapid decompression. Oxygen masks, emergency descent to 10,000 feet. She didn't expect to use any of it. But preparation was the difference between life and death. Finally, ATC called. AA8347, line up and wait runway 04L. Lining up 04L, AA8347. Camilla taxied onto the runway. 3,000 meters of asphalt stretched ahead, disappearing into distance. Partly cloudy skies, visibility good. Ready for departure, Rodrigo confirmed. Then let's fly. AA8347, cleared for takeoff runway 04L, wind 045 at 10 knots. Cleared for takeoff, 04L, AA8347. Camilla advanced the thrust levers smoothly to takeoff power. The engines roared, rising in pitch as the turbines surged to maximum thrust. The aircraft began its roll, slow at first, then accelerating fast. Runway markings blurred. 80 knots, Rodrigo called. Checked. V1. Decision speed. From that point, the takeoff was committed. Rotate. Camilla lifted the nose, smooth, firm. The wings bit into the air. Lift built. Main wheels left the ground. They were flying. Positive rate, Rodrigo announced. Gear up. A heavy clunk as the landing gear retracted and locked. Doors closed, the aircraft clean and streamlined. Flaps 1! The aircraft accelerated, climbing through scattered clouds. New York shrank beneath them, the vast city turning into a miniature grid of steel and light. Camilla held a steady climb, 2,500 feet per minute, monitoring every instrument. The left engine ran slightly warmer than the right, still within limits. Airspeed built gradually toward 250 knots. Passing 10,000 feet, the seatbelt sign illuminated automatically. Light turbulence shook the aircraft. "Captain, can I say something?" Rodrigo asked. "Go ahead." "When I saw you earlier in civilian clothes, without a uniform," I hesitated. For a split second I thought, is she really the captain? Or is this a system error? Camilla stayed silent, letting him finish. And now I realize how absurd that thought was, because if it had been a white man in civilian clothes saying he was the pilot, I would have believed him immediately. But you, black woman, you had to prove it. I'm sorry. Thank you for saying it. Most people won't even admit it to themselves. Rodrigo swallowed, then added, voice steadier. And now, watching you fly, the precision, the confidence, the way you handled what happened on the ground, you're better than half the captains I've flown with. Easily. That's kind of you, but the focus is getting to Miami safely. Yes, Captain. They climbed through 20,000 feet, 30,000, 40,000. Finally, they leveled at 35,000 feet. Cruise altitude. Camilla engaged the autopilot and monitored as the system took the load, her hands ready to intervene if needed. But it wasn't needed. The aircraft flew beautifully, slicing through thin air at nearly 500 knots. Ahead, the ocean stretched to the horizon, and beyond it, the storm waited. Camilla was reviewing the flight plan when the weather radar painted a long line of convective cells, 200 kilometers across. Red and yellow, dense with heavy precipitation and severe turbulence. There was no way around it. A reroute would add 2 hours, and their fuel margins didn't allow it. They would have to go through. Rodrigo, turn the seatbelt sign on. Tell the cabin we're expecting severe turbulence. Yes, Captain. The light illuminated. The chime echoed in the cabin. Camilla picked up the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Johnson. We are approaching an area of weather instability. Over the next 20 to 30 minutes, we expect moderate to severe turbulence. It is extremely important that you remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Cabin crew, prepare for turbulence and secure the cabin immediately. Patricia confirmed over the interphone. Cabin secured, Captain. Everyone seated. Thank you. Camilla reduced speed to 280 knots, the ideal turbulence penetration speed. Too fast increased structural stress, too slow reduced control authority. She tightened her seatbelt and verified Rodrigo did the same. Ready? Ready, Captain. They entered the cloud. At first it was only haze. Visibility dropped, but turbulence remained light, occasional bumps. Then it intensified. The aircraft dropped 300 feet in a second. The altitude alert sounded. Camilla corrected immediately, firm, controlled pressure, recovering the altitude without overreacting. Rain began hammering the windshield, drops striking like stones, each impact sharp and loud. Turbulence became continuous. The aircraft shook violently, pitching and rolling as the wings flexed and absorbed the air's aggression. In the cabin, controlled chaos. Passengers gripped armrests. Some prayed. Some cried. The man in seat 2B had gone pale. His hands clamped the armrests so hard his knuckles turned white. He stared toward the closed cockpit door, knowing Camilla was up there flying. Camilla, the woman he had questioned, the woman he had called lucky, the woman he had judged based on skin alone. And now his life was literally in her hands. Another violent jolt. The aircraft dropped again. Stomachs rose. A few people screamed. He thought of his daughter, his wife, his entire life that could end right there. And the truth hit him with a pain he couldn't deny. He had judged her before he even knew her. And now he depended on her completely to survive. Because in judging Camilla by skin, he had almost helped take away her chance to save him. In the cockpit, Camilla held absolute control. Her hands were firm but relaxed, making minimal inputs, letting the aircraft ride the turbulence instead of fighting it. She watched parameters, not fear. All systems normal, Rodrigo reported, tense but professional. Engines stable, hydraulics stable. Good. Keep monitoring. Lightning exploded off the right wing, lighting the cloud in blue-white flash. Thunder cracked even through the cockpit insulation. Outside air temperature dropping, Rodrigo said. -48. Anti-ice? Automatic, functioning normally. 15 more minutes of hell. Shaking, falling, climbing, passengers praying, crying, some vomiting. But Camilla stayed calm. Because she had trained for this. Hundreds of simulator hours, worst-case scenarios drilled until reflex. She had flown severe turbulence before. She knew the airplane could withstand far more than most passengers imagined. Then, gradually, it eased. The jolts became less frequent, less violent. The rain softened. And finally, they broke out. Blue sky ahead. Sunlight. Calm ocean 35,000 feet below. Camilla released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Full status? All green, Rodrigo said, relieved. No damage, no injuries reported. Excellent work. You flew that perfectly, Captain. Camilla turned off the seatbelt sign and took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now clear of the turbulence. Conditions should remain calm all the way to Miami. We apologize for the discomfort. Thank you for your patience and cooperation. In first class, the man in 2B finally released the armrests. His hands ached. He was breathing hard, cold sweat on his forehead. He called the flight attendant. Can you bring me paper and a pen? Of course. When he received them, he wrote with trembling hands. Captain Johnson, my name is John Santos. No relation. Seat 2B. I saw how security treated you at the gate. I saw everything, and I stayed silent. I said nothing because, shamefully, part of me assumed they might have had a reason. I was wrong, completely wrong. When you sat beside me, the first thing I asked was whether it was your first time in first class. As if you didn't belong. As if your presence needed an explanation. I just spent 20 minutes thinking I was going to die. 20 minutes depending completely on you to keep me alive, and you did it perfectly. I realize now that competence has no color. It has work, dedication, years of training. And I was blind to that because I let prejudice cloud my judgment. I'm sorry for doubting you. I'm sorry for judging you. And thank you for being a professional better than I deserved. I promise I will do better from now on, in the company I run, and in the life I live. I will remember this flight every time I'm tempted to judge someone by appearance. You didn't just save my life today, you changed mine. With gratitude and respect, John Santos. He folded the letter and handed it to the flight attendant. Please give this to the captain when you can. Minutes later, in the cockpit, Camilla read it. Tears threatened, but she contained them. She was still working. Still had 5 hours to go. Tears could come later. She slipped the letter carefully into her uniform pocket. Proof that sometimes, just sometimes, people truly learned. Miami appeared on the horizon. The sky was crystal clear now, a perfect blue, afternoon sun making the city shine. A TC began issuing instructions. AA 8347. Descend and maintain 15,000, reduce speed to 250. Leaving flight level, descending to 15,000, slowing to 250, AA 8347. Camilla eased the power back. The nose lowered 3 degrees. Descent rate settled at 1,500 feet per minute. Rodrigo, get the airport info. He tuned the broadcast, listened, and read it back. Miami Information Delta. Runway 08R in use. Wind 040 at 12 knots. Altimeter 30.12. Temperature 82 Fahrenheit. Set up the approach for 08R. Setting up. Camilla programmed the FMS with the approach procedure. Routing, altitudes, speeds. Everything calculated to bring them from their current position to a perfect runway alignment. Miami grew as they descended. Downtown towers, white beaches, a port with massive cruise ships. 10,000 feet, Rodrigo called. Flaps 1. Flaps 1. The wing surfaces extended slightly, increasing lift and drag. 5,000 feet. Flaps 5. Flaps 5. Gear down. Clunk. The wheels extended and locked. 3 green, Rodrigo confirmed. Checked. The runway came into view. 08R, nearly 9,000 feet of pavement, more than enough for a 787. Camilla disconnected the autopilot. She wanted manual control now. She wanted to feel the airplane respond directly. Perfect alignment. Correct speed. Stable glide path. 500 feet, Rodrigo called. Checked. 400. Checked. 300. Stable. Everything was configured. 200. 100. 50. 40. 30. 20. Camilla eased back slightly, flaring. The nose rose a touch. Vertical speed softened almost to 0. Main wheels kissed the runway. Smooth, perfect. Textbook. Reverse. Rodrigo deployed thrust reversers. The engines roared as airflow redirected forward, decelerating the aircraft. Spoilers deployed. Camilla applied braking gradually. The aircraft slowed with no jolt. Below 60 knots, she stowed reversers. Brakes only now. She exited the runway and taxied toward the terminal. AA 8347. Contact ground 121.8. 121.8. AA 8347. Thank you, good day. Over the interphone, Patricia announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Miami. Local temperature is 82 degrees. Local time is 3:35 p.m. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until the aircraft comes to a complete stop and the seatbelt sign is turned off. On behalf of the crew, thank you for flying with us, and thank you for your patience today. It was a privilege to have you on board." Camilla taxied into Gate E17, followed the marshaller's signals, and stopped precisely on the mark. Parking brake set. Shutdown. Shutdown checklist, Rodrigo confirmed. Engines spooled down. Systems transitioned to standby. The aircraft was secure. Camilla removed her headset, unbuckled, straightened her uniform. "Good work today, Rodrigo. Excellent flying. Captain, it was an honor flying with you. I learned more today than in 6 months of normal flights. Keep it up. You're going places." Camilla stood, straightened her blazer one last time. The 4 gold stripes still caught the light. Her wings gleamed. She opened the cockpit door, and for the second time that day, she heard something she didn't expect. Applause. All 280 passengers were on their feet, clapping, some crying, others smiling, many shouting, "Thank you! You're incredible! Best pilot I've ever flown with! Hero!" The man from 2B was at the front, tears still on his face. "Captain Johnson," he said when the applause softened, "we just lived through the scariest turbulence I've ever experienced, and you brought us in safely. You didn't just save our lives. You changed at least one. Mine. Thank you." Other voices stacked over each other. "Smoothest landing I've ever felt." "Unbelievable professionalism." "You inspired my daughter. I'll never forget this flight. Camilla nodded, professional but visibly moved. Thank you. But it was a team effort. The entire crew deserves credit. And you, thank you for trusting us, especially during the turbulence. She walked through first class, greeting passengers one by one. Then business, then economy. People wanted to shake her hand, take a photo, say thank you. And for the first time that long, brutal, transformative day, Camilla smiled. Genuinely. Because she had proved, again, what she'd always known. Competence has no color. It has only quality, work, and discipline. Camilla deplaned and went straight to the airline's operations office in Miami. Robert had called and said executive leadership wanted to see her immediately. Inside a conference room, 3 people were waiting. Susan Martinez, VP of Operations, James Cooper, General Counsel, and Patricia Drummond, Head of Human Resources. Captain Johnson. Susan stood immediately. First, thank you for stepping in under impossible circumstances. A TC reported your landing as flawless. Thank you. Second, we need to talk about what happened at JFK. We've spoken with Robert. We heard the recording. We saw the videos passengers posted. We are horrified. Camilla sat and placed her folder on the table. What do you need from me? Everything, James said, opening his laptop. Full timeline, documentation, witnesses, everything you can provide. I have a preliminary report here, Camilla said, opening her tablet. 23 pages, exact timestamps, full transcript of the audio, a list of 17 eyewitnesses, and 6 different videos from passengers, different angles, sent to me during the flight. Patricia took the tablet, her eyes widening as she read. This is meticulous. When did you even have time to compile this? During the quiet hours before the storm. And these videos, passengers filmed them? 6 different people, all agreed to provide copies for the investigation. James let out a low whistle. With this package, the criminal case is strong. Civil rights violations, harassment, and destruction of property. And abuse of authority, Susan added. They used their position to target you. That's its own charge. I want a civil lawsuit too, Camilla said. Not only criminal. I completely agree, James replied. Emotional distress, property damage, civil rights claims. I'm thinking 800,000? 1 million? 850,000, Camilla said without hesitation. With one condition. What? Half goes into a fund, a black pilot training fund, scholarships, flight hours, mentorship, so more people like me can get here without living what I lived. Silence around the table. Then Susan smiled, her eyes wet. The company will match it, total, $1.7 million, and we'll build a formal program, the Captain Camilla Johnson program. Your name, your legacy. Thank you. No, Patricia said firmly. Thank you. For documenting. For refusing to let it slide. For forcing the system to change. James closed his laptop. Criminal referrals start tomorrow. With audio, multiple videos, and witnesses. Prosecutors will love this case. And Mark Reynolds and Jason Miller? Terminated for cause at 2 p.m. today, Patricia confirmed. They will never work in aviation security again. We will make sure of it. And we're digging into their history, because if they did this to you, they did it to others. Camilla's voice stayed calm. Mark has 12 complaints in 6 years. Jason has 5 in 2. Patricia went pale. 12? And nobody acted? Apparently not. Susan's tone turned to steel. That changes today. Every complaint will be reopened. Every victim will be contacted. And we will overhaul the reporting protocol. Real zero tolerance, not a slogan. What about the supervisors who buried the reports? Camilla asked. Under investigation too, Patricia answered. If they knowingly enabled it, there will be consequences. The meeting ran another hour. Every detail documented. Every action planned. By the time it ended, Camilla was exhausted. As she stood to leave, Susan added one more thing. The media already picked it up. The videos went viral. 5 million views in 4 hours. Press is asking for interviews. I'm not ready to speak publicly. Understood. When you are, you'll have our full support. Camilla was back home in New York when James called. The criminal case was accepted. Mark and Jason have been formally charged. Preliminary hearing next week. Are they going to fight it? Their attorney tried to propose a deal. Public apology in exchange for reduced penalties. And? We rejected it. With the evidence we have, we don't need a deal. Good. James paused, then continued. There's more. The historical review found 17 similar cases in the last 8 years. 17 people humiliated, searched without cause, prevented from boarding, all black or brown. Camilla closed her eyes, feeling the weight. 17. Yes. And now all of them have grounds to sue. Several have already contacted us. So I wasn't the first, just the first to document. Exactly. And that's why your case is changing everything. Because you proved what others weren't able to prove, even when it happened to them. 3 weeks later, Camilla received the notice. Mark and Jason had been convicted. The hearing lasted only 2 days because the evidence was overwhelming. Sentence: 8 months each in a custodial program, plus 2 years of mandated community service in racial justice education programs. And more. In the written decision, the judge, a 60-year-old black woman named Judge Denise Walker, included final remarks that were published and widely shared. This case is more than 2 security officers acting with prejudice. It is a system that for too long allowed prejudice to thrive without consequence. Captain Camilla Johnson should never have had to document her own humiliation in such meticulous detail to be taken seriously. But because she did, she changed not only her own outcome, but potentially the future of thousands. Let this ruling serve as notice. Racism is not an opinion. It is a civil rights violation. And in this court, violations have consequences. Videos of the confrontation kept spreading. But what truly mattered wasn't the views. It was the precedent. Mark and Jason were convicted. 17 older cases were reopened. Protocols changed. And for the first time, the system answered. Camilla didn't feel revenge. She felt something rarer. Justice. And when she walked back into the 787 cockpit days later, adjusting the 4 gold stripes on her shoulders, she knew she hadn't won just one battle. She had opened a door, and this time it would not close. And if you made it this far in the video, comment "Hero Pilot" so I can leave you a lovely heart. Share this story to remind others that everyone deserves respect, and leave a like to support our work. Subscribe to receive more stories like this.